this clip of Dr. Michael Hisier. He talked about this scholar who is a pagan, and he's literally a pagan. He talked about like how to call on these pagan gods and what pagan worship really looks like and what it really is. So please just wait as I play this clip. This clip is about 2 minutes long. Just listen to it right fast.
Just knew what they were doing. That isn't the way they're presented. And so does the magic really work? Well, that if spiritual powers, demonic powers, are paying attention, we'll just put it that way, to solicitation, the answer would be yes. They actually were approachable through these means. Now, this takes me mentally back. I'm not going to go into this very long, but a few years ago, actually it's probably about 10 years ago, I went to hear a paper at an SBL meeting, Society of Biblical Literature, a regional meeting, where a guy named Jordan Paper, a professor in the Northwest, was giving a paper. I had read Paper's book on polytheism called The Gods Are Many. Jordan Paper is a practicing polytheist. He's retired now from teaching, but I still see him at time to time at SBL meetings. I know what he looks like. He's a practicing polytheist, and he was very transparent about his quote-unquote faith. Okay, this is a scholarly meeting. Again, he's not holding anything back here. He says basically this only works if you solicit this kind of contact. It doesn't just happen. You have to want it, and you have to do things to solicit it. And the powers, I mean, he would use these terms, the powers, the gods, again, the spirits, will respond if you are open to their contact, to what they can do for you. And this was his faith. This is something he lived out every day, and he just presented it like it was normative, to a room full of scholars. And of course, everybody clapped nicely at the end. It just made me think if you'd have presented something that would have been evangelistic about Jesus, they probably would have, asked you not to come back. But the polytheism was okay. But again, this whole idea is still around today, and it's sort of, by those who are involved in it, it still works the same way. So I don't know on what basis we would look back at ancient texts and say, this was just a lot of hokum. I think there's more to it than that.
Okay, so now you see what Dr. Hisier is saying. You have to solicit these things, solicit these demons, call on them, call on these false gods. You have to be in worship. It has to be motivation. It has to be practice. It has to be effort behind them. These gods just don't show up. And that's what we see up in the ancient Near East. Those false gods, no ancient Near East text ever showed where people just set up an idol and a god appeared. They had to set up the idol. They had to bow down to it. They had to worship it. They had to do all these things. Like we can go back to Elijah when he was dealing with all these other people. They had the false gods. Elijah had his God, and they were sitting there cutting themselves for hours, waiting on their God to call them. And so if it's so easy for so-called Christians nowadays to worship pagan gods, that means a tree in your house, you are already in worship with pagan gods. You're calling on these gods. They are here for you. That is so false. We saw that these people literally were cutting themselves for hours, bleeding. These folks died trying to call on their God that wasn't going to show up because he's false. Okay, it's a lot of practice, a lot of effort when it comes to paganism. It's not so easily done, and we have a light view of it, a very, very light view of how they